There is a specific kind of person who gets asked the same question over and over again, usually with a slight tone of concern. What do you actually want to do with your life? They've started 3 different projects this year. They taught themselves graphic design, then got obsessed with marine biology documentaries, then spent 2 months building a small business that they later abandoned to learn coding. From the outside, this looks like a lack of discipline. From the inside, it feels like curiosity that refuses to sit still. Psychologists have a name for this pattern, and understanding it changes the entire conversation around career advice for these people. The term is multipotentiality, and it describes people who have both the capacity and the drive to pursue multiple fields rather than a single specialty. This is not the same as being unfocused or indecisive. A person with attention difficulties often struggles to finish anything because sustained focus itself is hard. A multipotentialite finishes plenty of things. They build real skills, produce real results, and often get quite good at whatever they touch. The difference is that once mastery starts to feel routine, the motivation drops, and a new subject pulls their attention somewhere else. The problem is not follow-through. The problem is that the traditional career model was never built for a mind like this. Most career advice assumes a linear identity. Pick a lane early, specialize, climb a ladder, become known for one thing. This model works well for people whose sense of purpose comes from depth. Go deep enough into one subject and eventually you reach mastery, recognition, and stability. But for someone whose brain is wired for breadth, this same path feels less like growth and more like slow suffocation. Psychologist Barbara Scher, who studied this pattern extensively, described these people as scanners, minds that are built to scan a wide horizon rather than drill down into a single point. Forcing a scanner into a specialist's box does not produce focus. It produces restlessness and eventually burnout because the person is fighting their own cognitive architecture. Here is a simple way to understand what is happening biologically. Novelty triggers dopamine release, the brain's chemical signal for reward and motivation. For most people, this novelty response fades once a skill becomes familiar and a different reward system takes over, one based on long-term identity and mastery. In multipotentialites, the novelty-driven reward system stays dominant much longer. Learning a new skill from zero produces a much stronger internal reward than refining an already known skill. This is not a character flaw. It is closer to a different reward curve. Recognizing this reframes the whole situation. The goal is not to force the reward system to change. The goal is to build a career strategy around it. Consider a real-world pattern that shows up constantly in this group. Someone spends 2 years becoming skilled at UX design, reaches a comfortable level of competence, and then instead of pushing toward expert status, they pivot into something like behavioral research or product strategy. On paper, this looks like starting over. In practice, something more interesting is happening. The design skill does not disappear. It becomes part of a growing internal toolkit. The person who later works in product strategy now understands both the visual and behavioral sides of a product in a way that a narrow specialist never will. This is the actual advantage of multipotentiality, and it has a name in career psychology: skill stacking. A person does not need to be the best in the world at any single skill. They need to combine 2 or 3 skills in a way that almost nobody else has combined, and that combination becomes their unique value. This is precisely how many unconventional but highly successful careers actually formed. A person trained in psychology moves into user experience design because understanding human behavior turns out to be the missing piece that most designers lack. A person trained in biology moves into science communication because most communicators do not understand the subject deeply enough to explain it well, and most scientists cannot write in an engaging way. The individual skills might be common, the combination is rare. Rarity, not depth alone, is what creates market value in a specialized economy that is now shifting toward hybrid roles. Understanding this shifts the career question from "what should I specialize in?" to "what pattern connects the things I am drawn to?" This is a different kind of self-inquiry, and it requires looking backward rather than forward. Someone might notice that every subject they have pursued, from psychology to marketing to writing, actually shares a common thread: understanding why people make the decisions they make. The surface subjects change, but the underlying thread stays consistent. Once that thread becomes visible, career choices stop looking random. They start looking like different expressions of the same core interest explored from different angles. There is also a practical structure that helps multipotentialites build stable careers instead of just interesting resumes. One useful approach is to separate income-generating work from exploratory work, at least during the years when stability still matters. A single reliable skill, freelancing, consulting, or a flexible job, can provide financial security while other interests get explored on the side without the pressure of needing to pay rent. This removes the false idea that every interest has to become a career. Some interests are meant to stay hobbies, and that is completely fine. The mistake most multipotentialites make is assuming that if something excites them, it must become their next job. Not every fascination needs monetizing. Some just need space to exist. Another useful strategy is thinking in terms of projects rather than permanent identities. Instead of asking, "Am I a writer or a designer or a researcher?" a multipotentiality can ask, "What is the project in front of me right now, and what does it require?" This removes the identity pressure entirely. A project has a beginning and an end. It does not demand a lifelong label. This mental shift alone reduces a huge amount of the anxiety that comes from feeling like you constantly have to reinvent yourself, when really you are just moving between projects the same way a specialist moves between clients. The economic environment has also shifted in a way that favors this type of mind more than it used to. 20 years ago, deep specialization was almost always rewarded more than breadth. Today, many of the most valuable roles sit exactly at the intersection of fields. Data analysis combined with storytelling, technology combined with psychology, business combined with design. Companies increasingly need people who can translate between departments, who can see a problem from more than one angle, and who are not trapped inside a single professional vocabulary. This is not a coincidence. As industries grow more complex, the connectors between fields become more valuable, not less. None of this means multipotentiality is free of real challenges. Financial instability is a legitimate risk if exploration is not paired with some form of structure. Self-doubt is common, especially when comparing yourself to people who look impressively focused. And there's a genuine skill in learning when curiosity has run its course on a subject versus when discomfort is simply the natural friction before a breakthrough. Not every urge to quit is a signal to actually quit. Part of the work is learning to tell the difference between boredom that signals it is time to move on and difficulty that simply means the interesting part has not started yet. The most useful shift, in the end, is not trying to become someone who has one passion, because that identity may simply not fit. The more honest and more productive shift is learning to build a career the way someone actually is wired, rather than the way career advice from a different era assumed everyone should be. A mind that moves across subjects is not broken. It is a different kind of engine, and once it is pointed in a coherent direction, instead of being judged against a model it was never meant to fit, it can produce a career that looks less like a straight line and more like a web. One where every strand strengthens the others instead of competing with them.